Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
Dumbledore witnessed the terrible scene unfolding before his eyes. A boy of no more than 12 years old, with very dark hair and strange red eyes, stood between a blonde boy with innocent blue eyes and another blonde boy. The latter shuddered when they saw how the other guy received at least 12 needles for him. Her eyes turned an onyx color and looked back at the boy she had just saved, and he collapsed in her arms. Sasuke, why? Who knows, I hated you, my body just moved on its own. After exchanging a few more words, the two boys closed their dark eyes, and tears slid down their blue eyes. I hated you too, Sasuke, she said as she hugged the boy to her chest, and yet, she turned to the masked boy who had thrown the needles. You will pay for this. As he watched the fight, Dumbledore was amazed. I had definitely found the right guy. He was furious about the murder of his friend, but he was still hesitant to kill him until the masked boy started begging him. Horrified as he was, Dumbledore couldn't help but smile to himself. This kid looked so much like his parents. His mother's attitude, his father's mercy, his mother's fighting style, and he hoped also his magical style, his father's appearance, and the bravery of both. When both conscious children disappeared for some unknown reason from the Hall of Ice Mirrors, he approached the other boy and took out his wand. Confident that the boy was only in a death-like state from some unknown jutsu he had no knowledge of, he pulled out his transporter and disappeared. Later that day, Team 7 was in front of the O-Cage, reviewing the mission, when suddenly the door detached from its hinges and fell to the ground, exposing two unconscious Chunin guards and a giant between them. In fluent Japanese, he said, I am so very sorry, although he did not seem regretful. It had taken him quite a bit of magic, borrowed by Dumbledore, to get past the two guards. The three young ninjas and their sensei unsheathed their kunai. The giant ignored them, turned around, and recognized the door as if it were a simple piece of paper. He put it back in its place, took out an umbrella. He hit the hinges, and suddenly the door was as good as new. He put the umbrella away in his huge coat and turned to the shinobi. I have a letter here for a certain Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto said after a brief hesitation. It's me. The giant dedicated a kind smile to the young girl after having listened. All about him by Dumbledore. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, or so it seemed in his hands. Naruto took it bravely, though cautiously, and opened the seal. While Naruto was reading, Hagrid looked curiously at Kakashi, and then her eyes widened. Oh my god, it can't be Kakashi. Kakashi looked puzzled. I am me, do you know me? Why haven't I seen you since you were 13? I don't remember ever seeing you. Well, of course not. In that ninja war of yours, I had to use a multiplayer potion to transform myself and avoid being attacked. Were you in the third great ninja war? Kakashi exclaimed, truly amazed. The O-Cage called Kakashi and whispered to him. I had to enlist the help of an old friend from the magic community who sent us help during the great ninja war, in exchange for us allowing them to use our ninja hunters to track down a dark wizard. If it hadn't been for the help of the magical community, it's hard to say how that war would have ended. Kakashi promoted. He knew that there were magicians, but he had never given it much importance because their world had no effect on his. But when Naruto's eyes widened, and he said, Kaka-sensei, handing him the letter, knew that maybe he would have to pay attention to them. Is this a joke? Naruto asked him accusingly. The giant's smile did not waver. Who are you? The boy asked him. Oh, I'm sorry, my name is Rubius Argrid, a gardener at Hogwarts. You've probably been told everything by now. No, Naruto turned to the O-Cage, who showed an unusual nervousness in him. What is it that they never told you who your mother was? I don't know anything about either of my parents. So what? Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, I think you'd better leave while we're talking about this. Naruto turned to Ygritte, feeling that he was the only one who would answer. What's going on? You're a wizard, Naruto. A what? That's right, your mother was a witch, and one of the best that ever lived. He got a position in the Ministry of Magic at the age of 19. Of course, he only served 3 years of service and then returned to the ninja world. In fact, her family is the only one in the world that possesses both magic and chakra. And my father. He was a Mughal, he said, feeling that it was no longer his place to say so. They must have had a good reason for keeping their origin a secret. What is a Mughal? People without magic, like your friends here, even if they are ninjas, they and your father could hardly be considered ordinary muggles. You three, the Okage said without prompting retorts, we have a lot to discuss. Naruto will be coming to get you soon. Too confused and shocked to argue, he followed his companions out of the office of the Okage. As soon as the children left the room, Agrid frowned at Okage. That kid has no idea who he is, right? The other two adults remained silent. You never told her. Agrid paused for a minute. Well, Professor Dumbledore trusts your judgment, so do I. A faint smile was drawn on the Okage's face. How is Dumbledore? I haven't seen him since after the sealing of the Kirugi. She paused. I guess you already know that. Agrid shuddered slightly, but perceptibly. Yes, of course I've heard. He paused. You hid the boy well. Even Dumbledore had a hard time finding it. I should have started at Hogwarts last year. Make sure Dumbledore understands that his father's dying wish was that he not know anything about his inheritance until he was ready. Therefore, if he decides to come with you, he must not know anything about his mother's origins or his father's position. You can get to know the place of Kushina in the world. Magical, but nothing more. Then he is allowed to leave. Only if he wants, and as long as he is allowed time for his ninja training. And also as long as Dumbledore knows my conditions regarding the child. I'll inform Professor Dumbledore and let you talk to Naruto, he said as he walked towards the door and then stopped. I guess you don't want anyone to know anything about the fox. The shadow darkened his face. If Dumbledore says a single word, or if Kami-sama forbids it, if something happens to Naruto, who has already suffered enough for a lifetime, then he will have to deal with me, and the friendship we share will not free him from my wrath. His voice was terribly serious, and Agrid knew he wasn't joking. Dumbledore had told her before they got involved in the Girl War that the wizard's variety of magic, coupled with the cunning and ease with which they executed it, could easily give them a chance of equal or even superior victory in some exceptional cases, especially since the wizards were completely unaware of other wizards, and would be vulnerable to surprises in war. But in combat, a mage had no chance. The chakra was too powerful, and the jutsus too complex for their simplest techniques to be able to overcome them on the battlefield. A mage didn't stand a chance against a ninja under those circumstances. Understood, sir, he said and left, leaving the door on his waffles this time. Kakashi had no idea that his sensei had married a witch, but to be fair, Minato never used to talk about his private life. In fact, he only knew that Naruto was his sensei's son because he saw the uncanny resemblance, and demanded an explanation from the Sandami. Okage-sama, Naruto can't leave. We will be missing a team member, and his training will be affected. I will give you some copies of forbidden scrolls with which you will learn ninjutsu, but only the ones that I select. He'll learn fast with those scrolls, like Iruka told me he learned with the Kujebansen. You will seal a clone inside a scroll to teach it taijutsu. As for the team, no genin will rise above the rank of. Until the Chunin exams, which coincide with Christmas, a holiday in which students have school holidays. So Naruto will return to participate. Don't worry, Kakashi. There is a possibility that he will decide not to go, and even if he goes, he will receive more respect there than here. Kakashi lowered his head in defeat. I knew that Naruto was despised there, and that maybe he could forge good relationships. I was hoping that would cause Konoha to lose him, even if they didn't deserve it. Naruto walked in silence with his comrades, with his hands crossed behind his head, thinking carefully about this strange offer. He turned to Sasuke and Sakura. What do you think? I think there's something weird about that guy, Sasuke muttered. Other than the fact that he's 7 feet tall, Naruto said with a mocking smile. Shut up, you idiot, Sasuke said, pausing. Magicians, magic, witchcraft school. Do you think the Okage is a fool? I don't know, Sasuke, Sakura ventured. The third Okage didn't seem to refute him, and didn't seem surprised by the giant either. Naruto took out his letter and read it over and over until they arrived at the training camp. He put it away when he arrived. Even though they were supposed to train, they couldn't get motivated enough to do it. That was until Naruto and Sasuke started arguing. Their discussions always started the same way. Sasuke would provoke Naruto by calling him something like dope, and Naruto would respond with fear, and they would soon come to blows. Sasuke could beat Naruto every time, and they both knew it, but Naruto was willing to take a chance just to land some good blows on him and evaluate how much closer he was to beating Sasuke. That was his main motivation for training. Naruto landed some good punches, no doubt, but Sasuke managed to knock him down quickly with one knee on his back, and both hands held tightly by Sasuke. For an instant, while keeping his rival on the ground, Sasuke thought, Naruto has improved. What must have happened between him and Aku while he was unconscious? Surely Naruto couldn't have beaten him. That loser could never beat someone he couldn't beat. A snap and a brief fall to the ground interrupted his thoughts. His knee landed where Naruto was before. He narrowly dodged a Kuna, and that would have grazed his ear. He turned around and saw Naruto spinning another Kuna, and with a mischievous smile. They were about to throw weapons when a Chunin appeared who had been knocked out by Agrid. Naruto-san, the Okage-sama wishes to see you. Sakura prepared to go and Sasuke took a step forward. Alone, he said sternly. Naruto waved and smiled at him and left with the Chunin. While walking with the guard, he saw the giant riding in a strange-looking vehicle. Naruto called you, Mrs. Grid. He screamed. Despite having small and young lungs, his voice did not come with much breath, and the Chunin rubbed his ear. Agrid approached the two of them and smiled. Call me at Grid. Agrid, could you tell me something about magic? Well, I guess it's similar to your jutsu, but we use magic for everything. Could you show it to me? As long as you promise not to tell anyone. I can't do magic anymore, do you understand? Naruto didn't even bother to ask why, I swear by my cute. Agrid took the umbrella and exclaimed, the Carnum Inflammari. A small flame sprouted from the wand and fell to the ground. He exclaimed again, and water escaped from the wand, extinguishing the fire. As you can see, it is something similar to your chakra, but we do not usually use magic to fight unless it is necessary. Since ours is a peaceful and anonymous society, he thought it was better not to mention the disasters that occurred a few years ago. He then levitated a cradle and Naruto's bag. Magic is basically used for everyday life, but that doesn't mean you can't fight with it. Your mother was the supreme world dueling champion. Naruto remained silent for a moment, thank you. No problem. Agrid got on his motorbike and watched the magician walking away and the Chunin, thinking about an even more important letter he had to deliver. At least this kid would know about magic and there would be less explanations and arguments. Or so I thought. The Chunin remained outside the door while Naruto entered. The Okage and Kakashi were where I had left them. The Okage, along with Kakashi, silently waited for Naruto to decide not to abandon his team. According to Agrid, if he accepted, Dumbledore would personally come and get him and take him to buy his school supplies. While Agrid took care of Harry. I've decided that I'd like to learn magic, Naruto said with his usual determined smile. Before his senses and the eye could respond, a man seemed to fall from the ceiling and land as if floating. Although it had a strange appearance, Naruto liked it. Like the Okage, he was a kind-looking old man, although, oddly enough, he also looked tough, with long white hair, an equally long beard, and bright eyes. He was wearing a strange robe and wore half-moon glasses. Through them, he looked at Naruto with a smile. Then he turned to the window and exclaimed, "Old friend. It's good to see you again, Dumbledore," Sarutobi said with a sincere smile. "I have to admit that you haven't lost your touch. Even I had a hard time finding him, he should have been at school last year." Naruto didn't seem mad at them for hiding from him that his mother was a witch and that he, apparently, was a wizard. I was just glad to know something about her, no matter how little it was. They knew my mother. She was my best student and one of the most outstanding witches of her time. I can't talk about her life as a child, but I've also heard stories about her greatness in that area. Despite her greatness in our world, in her heart she was always a girl. In fact, you remind me a lot of her, although you are the spitting image of your father. Did you know him too? Not very well, I only met him through your mother. That was not true, she met him during the war, after Kushina died in childbirth. Naruto, if you're leaving, you'd better pack up and say goodbye while I talk to your director. He will meet you at the village gate, the Hokage said. Of course. Naruto exclaimed excitedly and ran out of the room. Indeed, his mother's son. Kakashi interrupted respectfully. We need your word that you will be safe. I guess you have all the necessary information about what is sealed inside. Yes, the headmaster said calmly but with a reassuring tone, and believe me, there is no safer place for him in our world than Hogwarts. It's true, I combined Sarutobi. Okage-sama, after the success of the mission in the Land of Waves, I was planning to enroll my team in the Chunin exams. I need to know for sure that Naruto will return to accompany them, otherwise I will not be able to apply. Oh, don't worry about that. Your Chunin exam coincides exactly with our Christmas vacation, when our students return home. So I will personally make sure that he is here and that he has enough time to training, as long as you provide the material. I'm having some scrolls drafted at this very moment. He paused. We have a lot to discuss before Naruto returns. Dumbledore sat down, ready to be questioned about the Nine Tails, and to find out what else he needed to know. Meanwhile, Naruto packed up his few belongings and tidied up his room, taking a look at it. He decided that he had to do it before saying goodbye, because he was afraid of repenting. He finally managed to connect with Sasuke and Sakura, but he would be back soon, and maybe he could forge more bonds during his absence. I had bonds as a child, but now I had to create some as a magician. However, deep down, he would always be a child. He would always be a blade shinobi, no matter what happened in the magical world. He said goodbye to the easiest ones first, like Kiba and Shikamaru, whom he barely knew, but still didn't want to leave without saying goodbye to them. He also went to look for Konohamaru, but only found Mojuden. Upon learning that Konohamaru was in the hospital after a small mishap during training, he asked them. They said goodbye to him, and he left. Then he went to find Sasuke and Sakura, hoping it wouldn't be difficult. He found them at the training ground chatting. Sakura was flirting, while Sasuke seemed to ignore her. He was sitting with his eyes closed, though not asleep. When Naruto approached, he opened his eyes and frowned as always, but there was a question in his gaze. Naruto answered her. I'm going to the magical world. His eyes opened wide, and Naruto stood waiting for them to say something. Sakura could see something in Sasuke's eyes, but she couldn't decipher it. Naruto did, and he replied. He remembered the mission in the country of waves. He thought about how Sasuke and Naruto had saved Kakashi-sensei. Not only had he been surprised that Naruto had come up with such an excellent plan, but also the fact that they had worked together without even having to talk. It was strange that the mere presence of the other seemed to enrage them, but if there was a perfect team, it was them. They seemed to share something that no one else could match. They seemed to read each other's minds and coordinate effortlessly. Naruto would never admit it, but he craved Sasuke's approval, and Sasuke would never admit it. But he saw Naruto as a potential threat. In fact, he was probably one of the few who knew that Naruto was strong. Although he would rather be burned with red-hot tongs than admit it. Why Naruto? And what about the Hokage? Naruto had his mind set on only one thing. Why was he changing it now? Sakura-chan, he said with a meaningful smile. He had such a kind smile that made Sakura laugh, and sometimes even made her day. But Naruto's smile and his unwavering optimism drove Sasuke crazy. This is an opportunity to get strong and get closer to the Hokage, Sakura said between giggles, her mind fixed on a single goal. Sasuke's face remained stoic as always. I have everything ready to leave at the village gate. Naruto turned around and was about to leave when he heard Sasuke say, Naruto. He turned and saw Sasuke with a familiar mocking smile on his face, the only expression that ever resembled a smile. Come back stronger because you are the one I want to fight the most. Naruto's face reflected a total surprise, very similar to Sakura's. The surprise turned into a smile, and he walked away with a gesture that promised his soon return. I'll be back in 2 months, just in time for the Chunin exams, and I'll write. Goodbye. Sakura greeted with an enthusiastic but sad gesture. Everything was going to be very quiet now. Naruto crossed the main doors where Dumbledore was waiting for him with his briefcase, which the director had conjured with his wand. "Are you ready, son? Are you kidding me? I'm ready for anything." He silently wondered if this would have happened to his friend, Professor Fudgeburn, may he rest in peace, when he went to the country of the Abu Eddies. Look for Kushina. Of course, the press picked up on the news. A magician, and a girl, a special girl. And I had a feeling Naruto was too. Dumbledore took out the serving bottle he had used as a shuttle and said, "Hold on tight." Naruto felt a tug in his stomach and suddenly saw himself flying through the air, but he couldn't see anything but fog. Then he let go when Dumbledore asked him to and fell to the ground, landing on his suitcase without cushioning the fall. While watching Dumbledore float to the ground, Dumbledore rang a bell. I knew that with that guy around, things were always going to be interesting. Naruto got up from the ground and shook off the dust. Dumbledore's bright eyes were smiling. "Now I would like to welcome you to Diagon Alley." Naruto was fascinated by the street. Although it lacked bright colors, it was not monotonous at all, but quite the opposite. Seeing the diversity in people's clothing, he looked at his letter and said, "I think I should buy clothes first." He put his hand in his pocket and found that he had only yen. Dumbledore pulled out his wand, and, in the blink of an eye, gleaming golden galleons appeared in Naruto's hand. Naruto was amazed. Dumbledore explained that it was simply a transformation spell. It had only worked because Naruto already had money. Since you can't use magic to create money out of nothing, it's illegal. Naruto understood that. Then, he broke up with Dumbledore and went into a clothing store. Some clothes had a rather outdated look, but in one corner of the store, he saw relatively modern clothes. He had enough galleons for 6 or 7 sets. The clothes were strange, but Naruto liked it. He chose jeans, drawstring sweatpants, one for training, a pair of sneakers, some boots, several t-shirts and tank tops, and 2 jackets. When she tried them on, she couldn't help but think that they fit her well. As he approached the counter to pay, it seemed strange to him to talk to the woman. Before leaving, Dumbledore put his wand to Naruto's throat and exclaimed, "Translucent." Then he did the same with his ear and explained that this spell translated everything that entered his ear, as well as everything that came out of his mouth. Things in the magical world were surprisingly cheap, with prices typical of the last century. And when he told the woman his name, they suddenly became cheaper. This surprised him above all, because before things used to get more expensive when people knew who he was. He tried to refuse, but she did not accept him. The son of the famous Kushina Uzumaki was in her shop. She would treasure that moment. This guy was the last wizard and ninja in the world. He put on his new clothes and left the store with the rest of his belongings in a backpack he had bought and a loose sickle. As he was leaving, he saw a modest flower stall where a pretty young girl, who might as well have been a flower, was trying to attract customers. She came up and asked for a flower as pretty as she, if she had any. She blushed, and her blush was noticeable even through her flawless mahogany skin. After half a minute, he mustered up enough courage to say, "2 blue buds for a sickle. They say that they unite people in friendship forever." Not mentioned that it was also the main ingredient of a love potion. The boy, who was almost her same age, gave her a dazzling smile, while she repressed a sigh. "He kept them for me." He handed her the sickle and took the blue buds. He stayed there for a couple more seconds, and then came back the way he had come. She put her left hand to her cheek to check if she was hot, but she felt something. He turned and looked at the shop window. He saw a blue cocoon tangled in her hair. When? He thought. Then she felt she had to sit down. She looked in the direction he had taken, but he was gone. Naruto re-entered the store and approached the kind lady, handing her the remaining blue cocoon. She seemed surprised for a moment, and then asked, "What is this for?" "It's a way of saying thank you, and the flower girl told me that it unites people in a friendship forever. I would love for you to be my friend Bara." The kind shop assistant's heart warmed at the sight of the child's smile. She took the flower and pinned it on her blouse, patting her on the head. After he left the store, he gently stroked the flower, thinking, "What a sweet child." As he was leaving the store for the second time, he saw Dumbledore. "Well, it looks like you've gotten quite a few clothes." Next up are your school robes. They are much more expensive, and I have no money. Okay, let's get some money out of your account. My account. Follow me. They came to a big building and entered. It was full of strange creatures. Dumbledore handed Naruto a golden key and led them through a maze until the creature Dumbledore called a goblin stopped before a large door and asked for the key. Naruto gave it to him. "What's in there, Professor?" he asked. He would have to get used to calling his teachers Professor instead of Sensei. "You know your mother was a member of the Ministry of Magic," Naruto nodded. "Well, this is the money he got after years of service, in addition to some of his valuable family possessions. He decreed that, if anything happened to him, everything would belong to you. The rest of his family died in the Third Great Ninja War. You are the last of the Uzumaki clan, and the last of your kind. A ninja and a magician at the same time." It cost Naruto the same, and when he opened the vault, he was stunned and without speaking, something unusual in him. The vault not only contained a fortune, but also some gorgeous-looking artifacts. One of them attracted him strangely. It was a gold bracelet that was placed on the upper arm, but it did not look like a simple bracelet, but rather like a dragon. If he put it on, the dragon's body would stand proudly on the bare arm, in full view of everyone. Its wings would curl behind the arm to hold it, and its tail would curl along the arm. It looked like a beautiful jewel, typical of an ancient warrior. He didn't know why, but Naruto felt an immense power emanating, and experienced a deep sensation inside. But he decided not to touch it, for now. He took a small velvet sack and looked inside. The galleons they contained would reach him for 3 months. That's your monthly allowance. Naruto was stunned. I would have to live with that for a month, which was 3 times, maybe more, than I was used to. However, he didn't say anything more about it, and went to get the rest of his school supplies. His mind constantly returning to that dragon bracelet. "I'll leave you for now, Naruto. When you are done, come to the dripping cauldron, ask anyone where it is and they will tell you." Naruto turned to look at the street, and then looked back at Dumbledore to ask him something, but he was gone. I didn't have to worry about the stone. He trusted Hagrid and knew that Hagrid and Harry had the upper hand on them. Quietly, I hoped that they would meet. One of the guys decided to buy his tunic first. He did not mention her name anymore, as Dumbledore had warned him not to. He bought his uniform, his cape, and a winter cape. She also bought a scarf, gloves that she could use to fly on a broom or hold a wand, and a belt where she could keep her wand, and some small jars of potions without attracting attention. He also had room for his bag of cribs. On the way out, he collided with a curly-haired girl who was wearing his robe and clutching books to her chest. "Hello," he greeted Naruto cheerfully. The girl blushed and looked at the floor, but said, "Hello, are you going to Hogwarts this year?" "Yes, my name is Naruto." "Mine is Hermione." "It's a nice name, what does it mean?" "I don't know exactly what yours means." "Maelstrom, but in Japan it's kind of a whirlpool." "Are you Japanese?" He had an exotic look, but he didn't exactly look Asian. His blonde hair gave him away. In fact, he didn't look like anyone she had ever seen before. Well, not exactly a long story, he decided not to mention the elementary countries. The fact that he wasn't even out of this world was reason enough not to reveal too much about himself. And if she was as smart as she seemed, she might realize who he was. "Anyway, you seem like just the kind of person who can help me. Could you tell me where the bookstore is?" Hermione blinked, and, seeing the books she was clutching tightly, blushed again, but said, "He's 2 blocks down on the left. You'll recognize him when you see him." Naruto smiled. "Thanks, I'll see you later." He was beginning to think it was strange how the witches behaved with him, but he let it go and went to buy his school books. She had a lot of free time, so she decided to start reading when she got to the dripping cauldron. Because of the way he had been treated, he had many expectations to meet, and he thought he would live up to all of them. That was the motivation that was going to be given, since there was no bastard that I wanted to beat up one day. When he finished buying his books, he realized that he had twice as many as the others. I didn't know what to think, because it was obvious that half of the books had been added to the letter after it was written. I didn't know what to think, but I didn't want to waste time thinking about it. After checking that the freshmen were not allowed to use brooms, he entered the broom shop. The owner smiled when he recognized him instantly, because Dumbledore had warned him of his arrival and warned him not to make a fuss. "Young Mr. Uzumaki, Dumbledore told me that he would be here and to deliver this to you." He retreated to the back room and returned with a broom. She looked more old-fashioned than the others, but she didn't look old. It was completely made of wood. There was no flaw in it, except that the same gold that the dragon bracelet was made of curled around the handle. But it was perfectly fitted into the wood, so that when sitting on it no lump was noticeable. "This was your mom's broom. It was made by her dad, and it's time to get it back to you. I know you'll put it to good use." Naruto reached into his pocket to pull out money. "No. No. No. This belongs to you by right. Your grandfather entrusted it to my father after your mother's death, just before he lost, in a big ninja war. I have been keeping it waiting for the day when he will return to his clan, of which only you are left." After that, Naruto couldn't argue with him, so he thanked him sincerely and left the store. After the man's assurance that, if he left his things there, they would be sent to the dripping cauldron along with his broom. Naruto was missing only a wand and an animal. He was directed to Ollivander's. The store was eerily silent until an elderly-looking man appeared from behind some boxes. "Another face I was hoping to see soon." Naruto didn't even bother to ask. In this country, I only received half answers. Now that she thought about it, her time there had been the quietest time of her life. "I remember your mother very well, young Uzumaki." "Everyone does," he said, smiling. "Oh, remember every wand I've sold, and every face I've sold it to, and I felt his presence in you the instant you walked through that door." "What wand did my mother use?" "Orange tree bark infused with nymph hair was buried with it. But let's find a wand that's right for you." He took out a seemingly random box and handed the wand inside to Naruto. "Use it." Naruto obeyed, and, in doing so, broke a vase. Ollivander pulled out another wand, seemingly at random, and handed it to the confused boy. Naruto waved her towards the wall, but the door behind him slammed open. The wand maker didn't seem to notice. He had a lost look, thoughtful. What Naruto didn't know was that, during that episode, he had been analyzing every detail of his client. The size of his arms, his grip, his movements with the wand, everything, trying to calculate which wand would suit him best. Naruto closed the door and turned around when he heard a voice saying with a hint of emotion, "I wonder." He sneaked into the back room and returned with a wand that, seen from afar, seemed to be a very soft brown, but as he got closer, it acquired a slightly orange hue, although most would consider it brown. Interestingly, the handle was decorated with the same gold as the armband and the broom. Attributing it to a coincidence, he took the wand, and, without even moving it, a red chakra emanated from him and surrounded her. The gold warmed up in his hand, and the wood took on a more intense orange hue. "We have found the perfect wand for you, Mr. Uzumaki. I've been waiting a long time to sell it. My father traveled through the elemental kingdoms with his partner, the craftsman Bartholomew, a dragon lord, looking for new magical objects to be set on wands. Because ninjas are so powerful, the magicians kept to the sidelines, and since they didn't see us as a threat, they left us alone. That was until they needed help in their last war. Anyway, while they were there, my father and his partner discovered a magnificent creature sleeping in a field. A giant fox with 9 tails." Naruto froze and squeezed the wand tightly. With great care, they took a hair from each tail, and, after 3 years of research, they discovered that the only magic capable of controlling that power was that of a dragon, and Bartholomew, as Dragon Lord, was the right person to master it. Naruto couldn't speak, he was quite terrified. The fox was on that wand, but somehow it felt comforting and right to have it in his hand. "That'll be 5 galleons, please." Naruto quickly thanked and left the store after paying the man. Once outside, he took a deep breath, put his wand in the shuriken bag he had strapped to the right leg of his jeans, and headed to his last stop, the pet store. Although I was the only customer in the store at the time, the atmosphere was lively, unlike Ollivander's, which was eerily quiet. Naruto looked around and saw many animals. Cats, toads, owls, and many more. After a while, something immediately caught his attention. In a cage at the back of the store, there was a bird that should have never been caged. The bird was a bright red, and, when he saw Naruto, he twittered and spread his magnificent wings, which protruded between the bars of the cage. Naruto slowly approached and put a finger against the bars. The beautiful bird responded by gently licking her hand. He gave a start when he heard a voice that said, "Wow, he really loves you." He usually ignores people coming into the store. Honestly, I never thought I would sell a phoenix to someone so young. What do you mean? Well, the phoenixes only serve those who have pure hearts and heroic deeds to their credit. Naruto can brag about his achievements to get attention where he doesn't get it elsewhere. But he never claimed to have heroic deeds or a pure heart. He must have made a mistake. The bird watched in protest, as if it understood every word. "It seems quite safe," the young woman said, smiling. "Are you going to buy it? It costs 15 galleons, but since he probably won't be choosing anyone again for a few centuries, I'll give it to you for 10. Naruto took out his bag. "I had enough to buy it and live well for the next month." The bird was extending its beak towards him. He turned to the shopkeeper and said, "I would love to buy it. You made a good choice. This bird will serve you until the end of its days and beyond." As you probably know, phoenixes do not reproduce, they die burning in flames and are reborn from their ashes. Their tears possess healing powers superior to those of any other bird and can carry weights that exceed the weight of 10 strong men. Naruto was amazed. He was wondering why such a valuable beak cost only 15 galleons. It should be worth at least a couple of months of your new paycheck. The reason I had in mind was that the phoenix were very proud, majestic and stubborn creatures that only served those they chose. And it was difficult to find someone worthy of their powers. Naruto looked at the wonderful creature and said, "The cage will not be necessary." "Are you sure?" "Yes. A bird like that shouldn't be caged, and Naruto didn't have the heart to cage anything, ironically. As soon as he opened the cage, the bird flew to him and perched proudly on his shoulder. After paying, he politely said goodbye to the lady. The whole magical world was so kind. Now I had to go to the leaky cauldron. Naruto turned to his left. "I guess you won't know where the leaky cauldron is." The last thing he expected was for the bird to fly from his shoulder and show him the way, but it did. The owner was very excited that Naruto Uzumaki was staying at his place, as Harry Potter had eaten there earlier that day. Apparently, they would both go to Hogwarts the next day on the land train 9-3/4. Dumbledore had asked him to act with discretion with the boy. He didn't need any more problems than he already had, not only for discovering that he was a wizard, but also the last of his clan and his kind. The man had many questions about the ninja world and about Naruto himself, but he decided to respect Dumbledore's request and keep silent. Naruto was escorted to his room. It was modest but cozy. He had a lot of free time, so he started reading and practicing spells. He took out the book about magical creatures, one of the ones that didn't appear in the original letter, but written in Dumbledore's handwriting. It was one of those books that no other freshman would buy, but he didn't think much of it. Most of those oddities were in the back of his mind. I was too absorbed by the magical world to think about them too much. He found the information about the phoenix that repeated and considerably expanded the description of the shopkeeper. He talked about the origin of the phoenix, its history, its biology, its power, its rise from the ashes, and much more. Naruto was reading fascinated. He was never motivated to learn anything that wasn't practical. But I was completely hooked on magic, like Kakashi-sense and Ichika. From his bed, he looked at the phoenix perched on the windowsill and beckoned to it with his arm. She flew towards him and landed on his elbow. He placed her gently on the bed and stroked her breast. She spread her wings, grateful for the caresses. After a while he said, "Well, what are we going to call you?" She understood him, but she just waited for him to give an answer while stroking his chin. He thought, the phoenixes were mythical birds of fire, right? He had the perfect name. "Osenka, I'll call you Osenka." The bird seemed pleased with its new name and let out a chirp of approval. Naruto was starting to love this world and was anxious for everyone to know about Osenka and everything else he had discovered there. But he thought he would wait until he got to Hogwarts, because he had the feeling. As he finished his potions book and went to bed that night, that he would have a lot more to write about. Naruto woke up in the morning when he heard a knock at the door and perceived the aroma of a strange but appetizing food. He knocked on the door. "Go ahead," just as they called back. A woman dressed in lackluster clothes, with a serious but kind face, entered with a breakfast tray. He placed her on his lap and wished her good morning. He gave her a galleon, and she left without a word, after a listless goodbye. 1. He had been through this so many times that he didn't bother anymore. I was just being nice. Naruto enjoyed the English breakfast that was served to him. He recognized every ingredient in the dish, but except for the fried egg and bacon. They were not cooked in any way he had ever seen before. The beans were covered with a strange sauce, and the toast smeared with something sweet, similar to jam, although I was sure it wasn't. He drank his tea with sugar and pushed aside the empty tray to put on bright blue jeans, a tight white t-shirt, his black military boots and his black jacket. He put everything in the suitcase he had been given for Hogwarts, put the in the shuriken's bag, and a kunai in his belt, since he had not found a safe way to hold the kunai bag, and went downstairs. Dumbledore received him with a train ticket. "Good morning, Naruto." "Good morning, Professor." "Sleep well." "Are you kidding me? Just by letting me get a good night's sleep tonight, I'm ready for anything." Dumbledore smiling at the memory of Kushina. Although Naruto was the spitting image of his kind and brave father Mughal, when he smiled, he looked more like her than ever. And when he spoke, if he closed his eyes, he would swear that he was talking to Kushina herself. That naughty young lady. The boy in question was very restless that morning, almost jumping over the walls. And if he hadn't been aware that he was upsetting the magicians nearby, it could have literally been like this. Dumbledore offered the train ticket to Naruto, who took it without a second thought. Without expecting to feel a familiar and unpleasant sensation, as if someone was pulling on his stomach. Before he could do the same, he found himself in the middle of a train station, with his belongings in a cart waiting for him. "I'm saying goodbye here, Naruto. Have a nice trip, and see you at Hogwarts." Naruto appeared, and, when he opened his eyes, Dumbledore had disappeared again. Unlike the Shunsin no Jutsu of the ninjas, there was no smoke, no bang, nothing. Just a silent and anonymous disappearance before anyone realized what was happening. While they weren't as powerful as ninjas, magicians were undoubtedly much more stealthy. "I'm going to have to get him to teach me that," Naruto thought. While pushing her cart, she saw a group of redheads walk through a wall one by one. When the last redhead disappeared, and he saw a woman and a girl wave and walk away, he blinked in amazement and said to them, "Excuse me, ma'am." The motherly-looking woman turned and found herself face to face with a sweet-looking blonde boy. "Yes, honey," he said. "Two children needed your help in one day." Although she had enough of her own children, she didn't mind giving affection to others. In fact, he loved doing it. "I was wondering if there are any spells that need to be done, or if you just go through the wall." "Yes, honey, you cross the wall without problems. The barrier is just an illusion, but it will seal itself very soon, so hurry up." He turned to look at the shy girl. "Is this your daughter?" "Yes. It shows that she has your beauty." "Cool, what a charm. What's your name?" "Naruto." "I'm Molly Wesley and she's Hindi," the girl said, hiding behind her mother. "Maybe I'll see you at the parents' meeting. Pray that you will enter Gryffindor." The boy thanked them and crossed the barrier. The woman silently wished to see him again. He was so sweet, and she always felt tenderness for sweet children, and knew how to recognize a Gryffindor when she saw him. Naruto stepped through the wall cautiously, closing his eyes for fear of colliding. When he opened them, he found himself in front of a beautiful antique train, surrounded by excited children who were rushing to get on. A huge smile was drawn on Naruto's face as he contemplated what he had never seen before. He must have stayed there for a few minutes, until he heard a whistle and the last call to board. He put his luggage away and boarded the train, his eyes still filled with wonder. As he was arriving a little late, it was difficult for him to find an empty seat, but the train started before he could find it. While walking on the train, she came across a group of girls who had just come out of their compartment to look out of the opposite window as they were approaching a bridge over a wide expanse of sparkling water. He turned to them curiously. When they saw him, he smiled. The girls chuckled and hurried back to their compartment, closing the door. Naruto was confused. He was used to people running away from him, but giggles were a new thing. He shrugged and kept looking for a seat. He found a compartment where two boys were sitting. One was red-haired, probably a family member I had seen before, and the other was skinny and had black hair. He opened the sliding door and asked, "Is this place free? Everyone else is busy." Harry and Ron were sitting, amiably eating the large amount of sweets from the cart that they had bought, when they heard the door open, and someone asking if they could sit down with them. They both looked up and were unprepared for what they saw. There stood a dangerous-looking boy, about his own age, with a strange-looking knife, no longer hidden by his jacket, tucked into his belt. And if it weren't for his very friendly smile, they might have thought he was ready to use it. He looked his age, but he had an impressive build for someone so young. The t-shirt she was wearing showed off her muscular arms and fitted her toned chest. They heard some girls laughing outside and assumed that was the reason. He had an exotic appearance, as of a breed they had never seen. She had silky blonde hair, pulled back by a strange ribbon that kept her face away from her piercing blue eyes. "Of course, have a seat." The boy sat down next to Ron and said, "My name is Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki." Ron opened his mouth for the second time since he entered the compartment. "Oh my god. Your mother is Kushina Uzumaki, the magic ninja. That's what people tell me. That means you are the last magic ninja alive." Ron was amazed to see two such famous people sitting in the same compartment. Then him. As soon as Naruto saw the sweets the boys were sharing, he asked, where did they get them? When Naruto found out that he had missed the tram, he exclaimed, "Oh. Help yourself," Harry said politely, pointing to the sweets. Naruto didn't hesitate. He examined the sweets next to him and picked up a box. Although Dumbledore had translated his ears and mouth, he had forgotten about his eyes, so Naruto could not read English. He put a bean in his mouth and tasted something that he would never put in his mouth. As far as he could tell, it was shampoo. "What are these?" he asked Ron with a grimace. "Jackdaws of all flavors." "Don't tell me," Naruto said, putting down the box and opening a chocolate frog. The frog made a huge leap, but Naruto's reflexes allowed him to catch it before it jumped out of the window. "Great!" Ron exclaimed. "We haven't even introduced ourselves yet," Harry said, feeling impolite. "I don't need to know your names." "Ron Weasley and Harry Potter," the boy said, leaving the boys speechless. "How did you know that?" Harry asked. Maybe he recognized his scar, but what about Ron? Naruto suddenly let out a giggle. "I've looked at your bags," he said, pointing over Harry's head. "Oh," said the boys, feeling embarrassed. "Now you could tell me who's who." "I'm Ron, and he's Harry Potter." "Haven't you heard about him?" "I haven't heard anything about the world anymore. Magical. I just arrived yesterday from the elementary countries." "But surely they have told you about the magical world." "No, I don't know anything about my parents or my heritage. This is the first time anyone has told me about them." "I know how you feel. I didn't know my parents either, and my uncles never told me nothing about this world." "How did you get that scar?" "I don't know exactly who gave you those scars. That's a story I don't know the half of." Happy to have made good friends, one of whom had a very similar past to his, he sat down with them to try strange sweets. But mostly delicious when a hairy head peeked through the door and asked, "Has anyone seen a toad?" A guy named Neville lost his. "No," Ron said impolitely. She saw Ron holding his wand, ready to turn the rat that was running around on his lap yellow. "Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see then." Ron cleared his throat and made a very successful attempt. "Are you sure it's a real spell?" "Well, it's not very good, is it?" "Of course, I've only tried a few simple ones, but they've all worked for me." He took out his wand and sat down in front of Harry. "For example, Oculus repaired." The glasses, which had been attached with adhesive tape a moment ago, were almost as good as new. "Much better, right? For heaven's sake, you're Harry Potter." "Really?" "Ron Weasley," he said between bites of candy. "Pleasure." "Hermione, it's you." "Naruto, I'm sorry I didn't see you," he said, blushing. It's okay, a ninja should remain undetected by the unknown, Naruto said. He himself knew that he was just an average ninja, but his reflexes and skills were worthy of admiration in a world where light. It's not the way of life. Wait a minute, girl, are you in Uzumaki? Yes, he said, still unable to believe he was famous. I've read about your family and Iris Millicent's magical relationships. It's a real pleasure to meet you both, she said, shaking Naruto and Harry's hand. Well, I'd better get going, I still have to find that toad. Oh, and you'd better put on your robes, I guess we'll be there soon. He got up and started to leave, but stopped at the door and turned to Ron. By the way, you have dirt on your nose, did you know? Right there. After the departure of the girl, the atmosphere changed. The boys fell silent. Naruto decided to break the silence, he hated it. Well, I'm going to change. By the time the boys had changed and collected their luggage, the train stopped. Naruto got off the train and came face to face with himself. Giant who had delivered the letter to him. Hagrid was holding a flashlight and said in her thunderous voice, "The freshman over here." And when he saw two familiar young faces, he said, "Hello Harry, Naruto." "Hi Arjit," they said hello simultaneously. "Wow," Ron exclaimed when he saw her impressed. Before height of Hagrid. "Okay, freshman, follow me," Naruto said. They followed Hagrid to the boats and rowed across a sparkling lake. Naruto thought about asking Kakashi-sensei to teach him the water walking jutsu the next time he saw him. It would be nice to give them a good scare. After a while on the boats, the first-year students spotted Hogwarts and gasped. Naruto decided that he had never seen anything so beautiful. The huge castle was illuminated like the gates of heaven, but when entering, the sky seemed otherworldly, with a gothic aspect. The freshmen were ushered up to some huge double doors, and were asked to wait by an elderly-looking woman who fit the Muggle-witch stereotype. A freshman with platinum blonde hair, looking in his direction, announced his presence by speaking for everyone to hear. So it's true what they say on the train. We have a magical ninja and Harry Potter at Hogwarts, he said as he approached the boys, trying to look calm and confident. He must be the last of the Uzumaki, he said, shaking Naruto's hand. I'm Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Ron let out a choked snort and Malfoy. She turned to him with an angry expression. Do you think my name is funny? No need to ask yours, red-haired and in a second-hand tunic. You must be a Weasley. He turned to Harry, hoping that such a prestigious family as the Uzumaki would recognize the rabble instantly. You'll see, Potter, that some magical families are better than others. You don't want to make friends with the wrong people. Harry raised his head without being intimidated. I think I can tell the wrong people apart by myself, thanks. Draco's face darkened with surprise, and he started to walk away with an angry expression, until Naruto's arm blocked his way. Before anyone could react, Naruto grabbed Draco's wrist and twisted it. The boy let out a cry of pain, and his knees buckled. If you insult someone's family again, I will twist it to the core. Because I bet his family is worth 10 times more than yours. Naruto twisted his arm even more and let go. Malfoy stepped back holding his wrist. Wait till my dad finds out about this. I'm sure Dad will fix everything if you can't do it yourself. The freshmen would have laughed if Gonagay hadn't come back in, so they settled for a sneaky laugh. There are now 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Follow me, and you will be assigned to your homes. As long as you are here, your home will be like your family. Naruto followed Kigonagayo along with the other freshmen through the huge doors, thinking that it would be great if the house he would be assigned to became a family. Being at Hogwarts would give her something she had never had before. The large dining room was magnificent. The ceiling is not real, it is enchanted to make it look like a night sky. I read it at Hogwarts. A story, she heard Hermione say to another girl. He had read the same thing when he was looking through his books during his night in the dripping cauldron. But he never expected it to be so spectacular. Professor Ampganage stopped and turned around. Suddenly, without warning, the hat perked up and began to sing the story of the beginnings of Hogwarts. Naruto, Harry, and the first-year Muggleborns almost fell over, but they recovered and listened carefully. When the hat was over, McGonagall called the students, placed the hat on their heads. The hat took a while to think, and then shouted the house they should belong to. When they heard Harry's name, the whole big dining room fell silent. Hermione's selection had been pretty quick, and Ron's almost instantaneous, not to mention. They announced Slytherin before the hat even touched Malfoy's head, but the hat took a while to decide the house of Archie, and Naruto would swear to have seen his friend mutter, "Not Slytherin, not Slytherin." Finally, the hat shouted, "Gryffindor." The whole big dining room, especially the Gryffindors, erupted in applause, and only when it calmed down, the selection resumed. They called everyone else, and only Naruto was missing. McGonagall pronounced his name, and, again, the large dining room fell silent. Even Dumbledore abused the ear. Naruto felt quite uncomfortable, as if he was in the crosshairs, but he saw the calm gesture of Dumbledore and climbed the few steps that surrounded him. McGonagall said, "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to take off your headband." Naruto sighed, but didn't reply. She took the ribbon off her hair and turned to face the salon. The girls who had not seen him on the train looked at him in amazement. They could not guess where it came from, perhaps from some unknown human race. No matter where he went, he was gorgeous. Silky blonde hair, piercing navy blue eyes, and some strange scars on his face that somehow suited him. However, the rest of her body was covered by the cape, so the girls in the salon managed to stay calm. He sat down, and they put the selection hat on his head. I could have sworn the flaps arched like I was smiling. "Mum, I was wondering when I'd see someone like you again, and from what I've heard, it's quite possible that you're the last one. I thought I would instantly know what to do with you, but now that I see you, we have a little dilemma. We can rule out Ravenclaw, although there is potential for great knowledge there. I see the most incredible loyalty and determination I've ever seen since before I was transformed, but I also see a talent hidden and an insatiable thirst to overcome oneself and others. Now, where should I put you? Can you hear me?" Naruto thought. "Yes, child, I hear you. I want to be put on Gryffindor, I have friends there. Ah yes, I see a lonely past, a whole life of being ignored and rejected, that's where your need to prove your worth and Greek comes from. Wait, what is this? Please, Kami-sama, no." He knew that the Sorting Hat must have seen the fox Mizuki had told him about years ago. He didn't know where he was hiding inside himself. But I knew I had to hide it. "Gryffindor, please, Gryffindor." The hat emerged from the depths of Naruto's mind. I could have sworn I saw something, but he decided to let it be. I knew I shouldn't have gone so deep. "You have enough courage for it, in fact, more courage than most. Well then, to your mothers." "Gryffindor." The great hall erupted in jubilation again, and the Gryffindors jumped out of their seats, eager to shake Naruto's hand. Naruto looked at Dumbledore, who smiled, knowing that the boy had been there from the beginning. When the big dining room calmed down again, Dumbledore stood up and said, "Let the banquet begin." With a simple gesture, the tables were filled with food. Naruto, who had only thought so far, narrowly blinked in amazement at the feast that had just appeared before his eyes. He touched a chicken wing just to check if it was real, even though the others around him were eating real food. When I was satisfied, he tried everything. He was going to miss the ramen with all his might, but the food they had there was perfect to distract him. I would definitely write about this. The next morning, Naruto woke up as soon as the sun lit up his face, mixing with his hair. He was so excited that his hyperactivity got the better of him. He washed, got ready and went downstairs thinking, "Kami-sama, these guys sleep much more soundly than we do at home." Sure, a ninja should be a light sleeper and alert to any danger, but he never imagined that people could be so oblivious to the world around them, even while they were sleeping. He, though he had tried not to, had made quite a noise, but only one or two of the boys. They moved. Naruto was tempted more than once to approach Ron to make sure he was still breathing, but instead, he went down to the common room and took two of the scrolls that the Hokage had given him, one of ninjutsu and one of taijutsu. He decided to obey the letter that the old man had written to him, asking him not to use the copies of the forbidden techniques until he mastered all the chakra control exercises that had been entrusted to him, leaving the copy in his drawer of the scroll that he had once been tricked into stealing. The ninjutsu scroll contained many basic chakra control exercises, many of which he found difficult without realizing it, as he possessed a large amount of chakra that made it difficult for him to control it. If he had been at home, he wouldn't have bothered with this kind of training, but being so far away made him aware that he could fall behind in his ninja training, and what was more important, even further behind Sasuke. They were boring, but I needed them. He reviewed the taijutsu scroll, examined the movements he had to learn, and read the note of the Okage. Create some shadow clones and use them for training. He smiled. I missed the old man. I had warned him that he had just over 2 months to learn these moves before Kakashi-sensei sent a clone of his on a scroll. I will train after classes are over, it was promised. So Kakashi would come right after Aoun, who I had heard all the witches and wizards talking about. I would ask him later. Hermione also woke up early, not as much as Naruto, but enough to read for a while. He saw Naruto, but he seemed so focused on his work that he decided to leave him alone and not disturb him, as everyone said he was. She didn't want to upset the first guy who had been nice to her in her life, apart, of course, from her family. Naruto felt a presence, but as he did not expect danger, he ignored it and continued reading. When he put down the ninjutsu scroll and picked up the taijutsu scroll, he saw the familiar face looking through a book of potions. In order not to interrupt her study, he decided not to greet her. I would wait until later. When Ari and Ron finally came down, he greeted them, ignoring the looks of disbelief they directed at him for getting up so early. But if he was going to go to school and train, he needed to resort to his resistance. First, he was in transformations with Professor Ampkenagel. Harry and Ron still had to get their books together, so Naruto left with Hermione. So do you like to read too? She asked. Well, not normally, but magic is more interesting than anything we have in my world. Also, I need to read my ninja scrolls, and I don't want to fall behind the other shinobi. It's understandable. I've been interested in magic, even before I found out I was a witch. You didn't know you were a witch either. No, my parents are both muggles, you know. The two of them. She moved up, hoping that wouldn't be a problem for her. No, he was too kind to be prejudiced about it. That's weird. I thought magic was something like a Kato and Genkai. What is that? He asked her with interest. Well, it translates as lineage limit, Kami-sama. It was so hard for him to get used to this language. He could still speak Japanese, but he had to think to make his language work. Maybe Hermione would teach him English. It means skills that can be passed down through families, but no one outside the family can have them. Well, magic is something similar, only if you are lucky, you can be born with it without having a magical background. That makes you a muggle fucker. And your parents. I read something about your mother, but who was your father, if you don't mind me asking? I don't know, but the problem is that I don't even know myself. No one tells me that. I don't know much about my mother either, except that she was a witch and my father was a Mughal. What am I then? I hate those terms, but that makes you what people call a mongrel. Professor Ampkenagel was much stricter than the other witches I had met there, but she was wise and fair, so Naruto liked her. However, I had to resist the growing temptation to call Grandma. I was sure he would be turned into a toad because of that. As Harry and Ron arrived late, Naruto sat next to Hermione, which didn't bother him. She reminded him a little bit of Sakura, only she was much less cruel, and didn't seem to mind the affectionate joke he played on her. If he messed with Sakura, even a little bit, she wouldn't be able to move 4 days. Hermione had no qualms about helping him if he got stuck. Sakura just called him an idiot, which hurt, but at least she wasn't mean all the time. She was simply too engrossed in Sasuke to show him much affection. Hermione was a good friend, a little annoying, and a little proud, but at the end of the day, a good friend. Harry and Ron ran into class and Hermione rolled her eyes. Naruto simply listened. Can you imagine the face the old lady would make in Konoha? Gay if we were to be late, Ron said tactlessly. Naruto closed his eyes tightly, as if expecting a blow, because he knew that the cunning witch was going to suddenly appear and give them a good reprimand. And he wasn't wrong. The cat jumped off the table and transformed into Gonage in the air, getting in between the guys and the witch. That was great, Ron exclaimed, amazed and somewhat frightened. After a serious threat to turn the boys into pocket watches, and they were late again, the class resumed. The teacher was very impressed with how easily Naruto performed spells. She was doing it even faster than Hermione, but when it came time to correct the written work she had been given, she took one look at it and shook her head slightly. It was obvious that the boy did not have a gift for studies, but he was one of the fastest spell learners I had ever seen. He didn't have to explain anything to her, and he always got closer with the spells to the first one. Maybe it had something to do with his chakra training, because although he wasn't especially good at it, his magic was a lot like channeling chakra, only the wand made it a lot easier. The old teacher began to wonder if they had put it in at the wrong level. I would have to talk to Dumbledore. Her first potions class was, in a word, traumatic. Professor Snape was ruthless and biased. He only awarded points to his own house, Slytherin, and subtracted points from the others whenever he found an excuse. Snape was getting angry with Harry and asking him all kinds of questions whose answers he did not know, while Hermione raised her hand in despair as if she was going to explode from not being able to answer. When Snape finished making Harry see that fame wasn't everything, he noticed another famous name on the list. Naruto stared into the potions professor's cold eyes, swearing that he might as well be an Uchiha. Mr. Uzumaki, right? Undeterred, Naruto spoke, but with respect. He didn't want to be the reason his team dropped points. Yes, sir. Could you tell me one of the essential ingredients of a love potion? He hadn't read his book enough to learn the list of potions, but he was pretty sure that this one was one of the most advanced. Even Hermione didn't raise her hand. He remembered looking through some books in the Diagon Alley store and came across a dictionary of ingredients for potions. He looked for the blue flower pollen, which was the one he had just bought that same day, and saw that it could be used to make anything from light blue magic ink to perfume with pheromones. But one of the potions was, in fact, a love potion, or more specifically, of infatuation. Blue flower pollen, sir. The class gasped. They obviously knew that it was an advanced potion. Snape seemed angry that he had gotten the answer and asked another. And what are the other purposes of the blue shoots, Mr. Uzumaki? Naruto decided that he had just been lucky to be asked those questions, although he had yet to meet the worst luck guy in the world. Then I would be very lucky indeed. Pollen can also be used to make magic ink, its petals can be crushed to make garden and Greek soup. Okay, that's enough, Snape said without changing his expression, but still quite angry. Naruto was uncomfortable. He had presented himself as a genius, and now, with the expectations he had generated, everyone expected him to live up to his mother. Well, he thought, I guess I'll have to try harder and get stronger. He smiled to himself, but managed to keep an impassive expression before the cold professor. Just to see her face was worth it. People kept looking at him in amazement, wondering if he really was a genius. In his hometown, he was the last one in the class, but here he seemed to have started on a good foot. I just wish they would stop looking at him. Although the boys' looks were nowhere near as disturbing as the girls'. It was strangely similar to the hungry look Sakura gave Sasuke, as if she wanted to pounce on him. No, it could be that, right? As he was leaving after class, Snape called him Mr. Uzumaki. Naruto thought to himself, damn it. But he would not regret it, because Snape had given him something invaluable. He took the book that Snape had offered him without a word and opened it, reading what it said. This book belongs to the Half-Blood Prince. Naruto stopped when he heard that, remembering Hermione's explanation about half-breeds and muggleborns. This didn't get it out of me, and don't let anyone see that book, or those 50 Gryffindor dots. Yes, sir, Naruto said, taking the book under his arm and walking away. And Mr. Uzumaki, Naruto turned around, trying not to look like his patience with the Uchiha clone was wavering. Although the gift of the book had helped to soften his attitude, 5 points for Gryffindor. The boy's lips curled into an almost invisible smile. Thank you, sir, goodbye. Snape cursed himself mentally, but he had no other choice. He was supposed to inform Dumbledore about the boy's progress, and upon finding out, the director would have rewarded him with many more points than Snape had awarded him. However, as the reward was already made, Dumbledore did not press the matter. Besides, even if she didn't like the boy, In the short time they had been in class together, she had developed a certain respect for him. There was something about that boy that made him likable. After a hearty lunch, and after Ron and Harry asked her what exactly she was eating, the boys went out to the countryside to meet Madame Ock for her first flight class. Naruto, of course, had his own broom, which became the envy of all the other students in the class. Wow, Naruto. Where did you get that from? Freshmen can't have brooms. Professor Dumbledore crossed that out in my letter, and the shopkeeper said he made it. My grandfather. Why is that? Is it a good broom? Good. Ron exclaimed. Fine. That's a Dragon Ray broom, the most versatile and powerful in the world. They don't even make them anymore. Wow. That was all Naruto could say. She left her broom on the floor next to the practice one and stood in line waiting for Madame Ock to arrive. She was a very punctual and sharp-tongued woman, but not malicious. Welcome to your first flying lesson, he said. Hurry up and get to the left of your broomsticks. Everyone rushed to obey. Now put your right hand on the broom and say up. Upstairs. Naruto said firmly, and the broom jumped straight into his hand. He looked around to see how his friends were doing. Harry had achieved it on the first try, just like Naruto, while many others had difficulty. So that his people would obey him. Consent, said Madame Ock. Hermione was in trouble. Her broom was wobbling on the floor, but it barely rose a few inches. Ron, in a resigned voice, ordered, upstairs. And the broom went off and hit him in the face. Naruto and Harry chuckled. Shut up, Harry, Ron said, smiling and rubbing his sore nose. When everyone finally held their brooms, Madame Ock told the students to get on them. Now to my whistle, propel yourselves hard from the ground and hold the broom tightly. We don't want anyone to slip. Stay suspended in the air for a few seconds, and then lean slightly forward to touch the ground again. 1, 2, 3. He blew his whistle and Neville's broom went up in the air. Mr. Longbottom, Madame Ock said, but it was evident that Neville wasn't doing it on purpose. He flew off screaming. All the students watched in concern as Madame Ock pulled out her wand and tried to get the broom to come back down. But it was too far away. Neville ended up hanging from the roof by his cape. He slipped and let go, but luckily he grabbed onto a statue before falling to the ground, hitting his arm. Get out of the way, everyone, Madame Ock ordered as she approached to examine the boy who was trembling. Oh dear, she said sweetly, she has broken her wrist. Okay, get up. Everyone with their feet on the ground, while I take Mr. Longbow take the infirmary. If I see a single broom in the air, whoever rides it will find themselves outside Hogwarts before I can say Kidditch. Malfoy held up the reminder that Neville had dropped. Harry became enraged and ordered Malfoy to hand it over to him. The cocky boy simply said, no. Naruto approached Malfoy from behind with a fearsome aura and said, give it to me or I'll finish twisting your wrist. Malfoy hid his fear towards the young trained warrior and said, you won't be able to do that if you can't catch me. And so saying, she soared through the air on her broom, challenging them to come up and take the object from him. This action greatly angered Eri and Naruto, and they both rode on their brooms. Hermione came up to them and said, no, you two, don't be so reckless. Did you not hear what Madame Ock said? Besides, neither of us can fly. The boys ignored her and, as if by instinct, flew straight towards Malfoy. Give me Malfoy before I pull the broom. Harry threatened. Malfoy was not impressed. Ah, I see. As you wish. And having said that, he threw the little ball in the air. Harry and Naruto became alert, and as if by instinct, Naruto remembered Kakashi-sensei's training in walking through the trees again, and jumped on his broom, using chakra to stay in the air, and shot out after Harry. Harry caught the ball right in front of a window in the castle. He looked at it and then threw it to Naruto, who caught it easily thanks to his reflexes. Naruto gave Harry a nod of approval with his thumb, as if telling him that he had done very well, and they both fell to the ground. Without knowing that Professor Ampkinage had been watching them everything. Just before hitting the ground, Naruto handed the ball back to Harry. I had caught him, he deserved it. The students ran towards them to congratulate them effusively, especially Harry. That was until teacher Ampkanage came out with a smile on her face and called the two boys to follow her. Malfoy and his henchmen smiled smugly, unaware that Kaguya had been impressed with the boys' flying ability, Harry's impressive reception, and their Naruto-style ninja reflexes. He took them to Professor Kurge's defense against the dark arts classroom and asked for a wad. A tall senior came out and nodded politely at the two boys. "Guys, may I introduce you to the captain of the Quidditch team, Oliver Ward," he said, addressing the major. "Ward, your team needs a seeker, and one of your hunters is leaving early to do an internship at the ministry. I've found you some great replacements," she added enthusiastically. Ward seemed to hesitate, but he was fair and wouldn't judge them before watching them play. The next day, the guys were walking together and talking about McGonagall's offer. "Come on, you two. The Quidditch is great, the best game there is. And we all know that you will be great too." Harry and Naruto stopped and turned to Ron. "But neither of us have ever played Quidditch," Naruto reasoned, although he was looking forward to trying it. "Yes, and if we make a fool of ourselves," Hermione seemed to come out of nowhere and interrupted Harry. "Neither of us will make a fool of ourselves, it's in your blood, you know." The three boys looked completely confused. Hermione told them to follow her. He led them to a gleaming trophy case, and although the room where it was kept was gloomy, the trophies shone. Harry and Naruto looked with interest and saw the name of James Potter, Seeker, on a shield. "Wow, Harry!" exclaimed Ron, "you never told me that your father was also a Seeker." Harry stared at his father's name. I didn't know that." Hermione patted Naruto on the shoulder and pointed to the wall above the trophy case. Ugly, where there was a newspaper article announcing that a local team of Kirik had reached the World Cup. Naruto then saw the name of Kushina Uzumaki among the team members, puncher and captain. Naruto became engrossed, as did Harry, wondering what his parents would be like and how wonderful. What would it have been like to meet them? Their friends allowed them to contemplate the article a while longer, then gently pushed them aside and led them back to the bedroom. Harry and Naruto exchanged a look that denoted concern about living up to such a reputation. Harry more than Naruto, because the latter knew for sure that, no matter what it cost, he would surpass the Hokages. And do the same with the sorcerers. The four freshmen were walking amicably back to the dormitory. Ron commented that not only was it disturbing that Naruto and Harry were so similar in terms of their pasts, but it was even more disturbing that Hermione seemed to know more about those pasts than they did themselves. The guys could only answer, "Who doesn't know?" The pleasant reflection between the young people was soon interrupted by a movement under their feet, and the realization that the staircase on which they were standing was moving. The young magicians clung to the railing as the surface beneath their feet shifted. "What's going on?" Harry asked. "Remember, the stairs change," Hermione replied, grabbing Naruto's arm with one hand and Rum's cloak with the other, to keep herself on her feet. The staircase, which seemed to have a sense of humor, stopped in an empty space, pointing to a small, dark door. "Let's go this way," Harry suggested, not caring where the door led, just eager to get off the stairs. They entered a dark corridor, completely in the dark. The only light came from the door that had been left open. Gargoyles with angry faces, which seemed about to jump and catch you at any moment, hung on the walls. Naruto's ninja instincts kicked in, and his teammates felt it too. "Does anyone think we shouldn't be here?" he asked. "We shouldn't be here. This is the third floor, it's forbidden," Hermione said, realizing then that she was still holding the rum cloak, and stepped back behind Naruto's imposing figure, more out of embarrassment than fear. Suddenly, a fire came out of nowhere, lighting up the hallway, which made the intruders even more nervous. "Let's go," Harry said urgently. He turned around, and they came face to face with a rather sinister-looking cat. Hermione knew right away that they were in trouble. "It's Filch's cat," he said in a loud, worried whisper. "Run!" They ordered Harry and Naruto at the same time, and everyone ran as fast as they could, frantically looking for somewhere to hide. "Quick, there's a door." Harry and Ron desperately pulled on the door. "It's locked," Harry shouted as quietly as panic would allow. Naruto and Hermione, on the other hand, remained quite calm. while Ron, in a panic-stricken voice, moaned, "That's it, we're lost." Hermione pushed him away by pulling out her wand. "Oh, step aside." "Hello, Mora." Naruto sound. I knew Hermione would have a solution. The door opened by itself, and everyone rushed in. "Hello, Mora?" Ron asked incredulously. "Chapter 7 of the Standard Book of Spells," she replied. Naruto knew that this spell would be useful for missions. He would have to start memorizing some, since, unlike his chakra training, he rarely needed to practice spells. Mental note, he thought, oblivious to his surroundings, going to the library after training. Wow, that doesn't sound like me. Maybe something is sticking to Hermione. Outside, Filch followed his cat down the hall and watched him. Suspecting something, but partly satisfied, he went away ordering Mrs. Norris to follow him. Inside, the students kept their ears glued to the door. "Filch is gone," Hermione whispered. "They should keep this door locked," Ron criticized. It was closed, Hermione pointed out until she heard. Talking to Harry, and saw what he and Naruto were staring at. And with good reason, Harry replied when the huge three-headed dog that occupied almost the entire room began to move. For a moment, the young magicians could only stare, but they reacted enough to scream and run out of the vitation, pushing the door in desperation as the heads tried to peek out, barking like crazy. When they finally managed to lock the door, they all leaned against it and sighed in unison. After recovering from the fright of having seen a three-headed dog and almost being attacked by one, he ran out of the hallway and returned to the Gryffindor common room. Well, 3 of them at least. Naruto said he had to train as a ninja. As he was walking away, he heard his friends arguing. What do they think they're doing keeping that thing locked up in a school? Ron growled angrily. You don't use your eyes, do you? Didn't you see what I was standing on? I didn't notice their paws, I was too absorbed in their heads. There were 3 of them. He was on a trapdoor, which can only mean one thing. He's guarding something. Naruto stopped in his tracks. He had seen the trapdoor, but he had not attached importance to it. Guarding something? Harry asked him. That's right. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed before you come up with another brilliant idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled. And with that, Hermione stormed off. Naruto couldn't help but laugh, especially when he heard Ron say, he needs to get his priorities in order. He would have gone back and tried to calm the tempers between his friends, but at that moment he had other priorities. Like making sure Kakashi-sensei's clone didn't beat him up when he arrived. Arriving at the compound, he looked up at the sky and, by the position of the sun, deduced that he had just over an hour left before the curfew of the first year. He opened the scroll that he had carefully kept in his robe. Although he had changed out of his school uniform into a tank top and sweatpants, he felt comfortable with his tunic on, although he would have to take it off when starting physical training. He went over the scroll one more time before he started practicing the movements. While practicing the Kajibunzen, he learned the movements very quickly. He realized this, but did not understand. The reason? Despite having used the Kajibunzen for most of her childhood career, she still hadn't realized that she learned everything that her clones learned. Hermione had become very interested in Naruto's education, because the cunning young witch could see that deep down. Naruto was very intelligent, and he knew this without having witnessed the surprisingly brilliant strategies that came out of nowhere around him, like the one he and Sasuke executed against Zabuza. Hermione deduced that he was instinctively intelligent. That is, if he was pressed, his intelligence manifested itself because his instincts took over and were obviously very resourceful. But Hermione also deduced that he had what she affectionately called the conscious intellectual capacity of a cactus. But she was determined to awaken his subconscious because, if she succeeded, she could turn him into a great wizard. However, she decided that it was better to wait until she was a close friend, so as not to push him away. After Naruto learned the moves by heart, he let his mind fly to the memory of the morning when everyone got mail, well, everyone except him and Harry. He called Osenka and gave her a letter. His book on magical creatures had already assured him that phoenixes could travel between dimensions, so he tied the letter to his leg and asked if he knew how to get to the elemental nations. She let out an affirmative chirp, and, after he described the location office to her, she was engulfed in flames, but left no ashes. Harry caught her attention while reading the newspaper Ron had received in the mail. Listen, someone broke into Gringotts to rob. Read the main headline about the bank robbery. The goblins of Gringotts insist that they did not take anything. The vault in question, number 713, had in fact been emptied earlier that day. He paused. How odd. That's the vault that Hagrid and I went to. The young magicians finished their breakfast in silence, wondering what had happened to the robbery and what relation it had to what Hagrid had collected. Naruto deduced that that must be what the three-headed dog they had bumped into that day was guarding. He also thought about home. Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi-sensei, the old man, surely they would have received your letter by now. Perhaps Osenko would return tomorrow with a letter from them. Suddenly he saw someone in the trees. Although the situation at Hogwarts seemed calm, recent events had warned him to be vigilant. He pulled out a crib and walked towards the trees. I know there's someone there, Sal. An Asian girl dressed in the Hufflepuff robe timidly came out from among the trees. Naruto thought she was pretty. Maybe not as much as Sakura, but beautiful after all. She also thought she was harmless, so she put away her crib and scratching the back of her neck, and smiling at her kindly so as not to scare her anymore. I'm sorry if I scared you. I'm used to nasty things coming out of dark woods, not pretty girls like you. She blushed and looked down. He tried to speak, but he stuttered. Naruto felt nostalgic when he saw that this girl reminded him of someone from the academy, the only person who had been kind to him. Even if she didn't talk to him much, or didn't talk much in general, he didn't know. What was his name? Hinata. Yes, it was she, a shy girl with few words, as he called her. This girl looked a little like her, only she didn't faint easily, and seemed somewhat more outgoing. She pulled herself together as fast as she could instead of running away. Come to think of it, a lot of girls in the ninja world acted like Hinata. No, it's my fault for scaring you, I just wanted to say hello, he said, stopping stuttering. But still looking at the ground with his hands behind his back, balancing on his heels. My name is Cho. I'm Naruto. Yes, I know, I'm sorry to interrupt your training, but it will be my best if I leave. See you later. 1. Naruto stood there puzzled by the strangeness of the girl, deducing that Cheerio must be some kind of slang related to her accent. He looked up at the sky and decided it was time to come in too. He would get up early and do some physical exercise before breakfast. Back in the land of fire, the oak-cage was visited by a beautiful red bird. She gracefully flew up to his office and perched on his desk. He saw the note carefully tied to his paw and gently took it. He read the scruffy Naruto lyrics. Hello, old man, and hello to everyone else too. This goes for all of you. When the oak-cage read that, he immediately sent for Team 7. I'm at Hogwarts now, and I have to say it's the strangest thing I've ever seen. The things I'm learning seem straight out of a fairy tale, but they are as real as we are. Sasuke, the potions professor might as well be one of your distant relatives. Seriously, the resemblance is chilling. I have also made very good friends here. Aries looks like me. She never met her parents, and no one told her about the magical world until she received her letter from Hogwarts. He's an excellent flyer, just like me, but not as good as him. However, thanks to your chakra training, Kakashi-sensei, I can stand on my broom when I fly, something that no one else can do. Harry and I are on the Quidditch team, it's a wizard's game. Don't ask me anymore, I hardly know anything about it myself. Ron is also great, he's very funny, and he comes from a huge family. His mom is lovely, and, when she found out that Ron had become a friend of ours, she sent Harry and me some homemade cakes. The food of this world is strange, but I have to say that it is almost as good as ramen. Hermione is great too. She reminds me a bit of you, Sakura, only she's definitely not a fighter and she never hits me. He always helps me with my homework. In fact, it's probably the main reason I bother doing it. Because, although he doesn't hit me, he can give me a good reprimand, the same or worse than you, Sakura. You'd think I'd be homesick, but the truth is I'm not. I do miss Konoha a lot, but this world and its people remind me a lot of home, and Hogwarts is starting to feel like a second home. Still, I'm really looking forward to coming back for the Christmas holidays. If you want to return a letter, just write it and give it to Osenka, she will know what to do. See you soon. Naruto? Team 7 remained motionless, not knowing what to